Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I got my main man, Jack McCurry, rolling alongside with me. How are we doing today, Jack?
We're doing good, and man, it is a great week to be a Browns fan. Obviously, free agency and the new league year has started, but man, Andrew Berry is flexing his muscles right now in Berea, I bet, and with good reason as well.
Yeah, the Browns have had a very successful first week of free agency. The tampering period starting on Monday, the new league year starting yesterday on Wednesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, and the Browns have made quite a bit of news. I know you guys talked about the John Johnson signing the other day, so we won't really get into that. But they did make another move today by signing Troy Hill, one of Johnson's running mates out there in LA, to a 4-year deal worth $24 million. It is expected that he is going to play the slot corner, which after some of the departures the Browns have had this offseason, it's certainly a position that was needed. Jack, this defense is finally starting to look like it's coming together with the signing of John Johnson. We'll get into a couple other signings, but to be able to lock down that slot position with Troy Hill, it's just a fantastic move, and I know it's just another spot that you don't have to worry about heading into the draft.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, slot, the nickel corner is such an important position on a football team now more than it's ever been. I mean, in recent years, you've seen nickels get paid because they're so important to to a team or a defense and to a football team in general. And when you look at Troy Hill, I mean, credit to our guy Jack Duffin. He has been on him since the beginning of the offseason as a potential option for the Browns. And shout out to the Orange and Brown Report because they've been killing it with free agent coverage, the rumors and everything. They've been on the Troy Hill hunt this week, saying that the Browns were interested, that John Johnson was even recruiting Troy to come join him with the Browns. Just a great move. I mean, like I said, Andrew Berry has been killing it. He's been letting these moves come to him. He hasn't been forcing these moves. I know a lot of people say, well, $6 million for a slot corner. I mean, that kind of might seem like an overpay, but the cornerback position is so important. The Browns didn't have a true nickel last year. They tried it with Kevin Johnson. It just wasn't working out. But to get a guy that not only can play in the slot, but Troy Hill also played on the outside with the Los Angeles Rams. So this is a great move because he gives you that versatility, which is something that Joe Woods likes in that secondary, and it seems like it's just a perfect fit. He is 30, which is kind of off the rails of what Barry and Dee Podesta would like to do when they're building a football team, but I think this is a guy that has proven it the last few years. He's one of, if not the best slot corners in the game. And I feel like he's only going to come here and continue to contribute at least the next couple seasons for the Browns.
How do we feel about the cornerback position as a whole right now? Because you have Denzel Ward, you have Troy Hill, you have Greedy Williams returning from injury. Where do you see, this position group needs to go? Do we see a couple draft picks being added in here? Do we see maybe another free agent signing? Where do you see this position group going?
I think they'll still look at the free agent market. I think it was the Canton Repository said that there's interest with Garyon Conley, the former Ohio State corner who was drafted by the Raiders, I believe. I think there's interest there. Casey Hayward's still out there on the market. Adoree Jackson, who Benjamin Albright said on Browns Daily that the Browns are one of the teams in the hunt for Adoree Jackson. Malcolm Butler's out there as well. So I could easily see them still trying to go out and get another outside corner just because Greedy Williams had a for sure thing coming off the nerve injury in his shoulder. They Terrence Mitchell obviously left in free agency. Tavier Thomas is gone. I don't think they're done adding to the cornerback room. I think they'll add another veteran in free agency, and then I think they'll look at one in the draft with one of the first few draft picks that they have. So they're definitely not done. And depth's not a bad thing. They're not going to overpay for it, but I think they're going to find the right guys that could come in and fit and compete against one another in that cornerback room.
Yeah, I certainly see them adding, at least a couple more. I mean, they have, you know, the rest of free agency, and they have 9 draft picks. And you start to look at where are all these draft picks going to fit on this team. I know at some point they might be able to draft solely for special teams, which is a luxury when you're able to do so. And they're very close to being able to do that because the offense is set. There's really no need for any additions there, except maybe a game breaking wide receiver with speed to be able to stretch opposing defenses. But defense wise, you have 3 safeties now with Harrison, Delpit, and John Johnson. Um, you have Denzel Ward. You have Troy Hill. You have Greedy Williams, who I'm not counting on, um, but hopefully he can start to get back on track. You probably need a defensive lineman or two still, but that's where the draft comes into play. So you're very close to having a set defense here already, and especially with the signing they made at defensive end, tack. So this defense is almost set, and when you're able to have a set defense head into the draft and a set offense, you know you're able to just draft for depth, and then that's how you turn out that bottom of the roster every year with draft picks. And we've talked about this before, Jack. That's why the Steelers are so good, or have been so good. They turn out draft pick after draft pick. These guys can sit for a couple years, play special teams, and they're able to jump right in when a star or starter leaves in free agency, and it's like they never missed a beat. So we're almost to that point, and it's such a nice luxury to have when you get to that point. So you know this defense and offense is almost set. The starting 22, and from there it's just continually building depth to this team. In case there is an injury, which there always are, and players will be leaving at some point when you're successful. It's just how it goes. So it's nice to see that they're almost to that point right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, when we did the off season deep dive, he was talking about sequencing, and I feel like with the starting defense pretty much set, you talk about in the draft like drafting for depth and drafting for special teams. You're also setting up for the future. Like, say they take a corner that they think can be a starter down the road, then you look at it, whenever if Greedy Williams doesn't pan out or whenever Denzel Ward's contract goes up, they'll have guys behind them ready to step in and step up when the time's called for them. And whenever Denzel Ward's contract's up, this guy's rookie deal's up, and then they can just flip flop, sign that guy to a long-term deal, and then just start the pipeline again of drafting, developing, and just keep the machine churning. And you have confidence right now that Andrew Berry, what he's done in the last calendar year in terms of free agency and the draft, that he's been able to fill out a roster that can compete and also look to add depth now to where they can extend that, they can take a run, which people are saying like, oh, we got 2 years to get this, to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, where instead, if he's drafting and he's adding talent in the draft and then is able to continue the pipeline, then you're going to take a 2-year window into a potential 6, 7, 8-year window. So as long as we keep drafting and finding talent, whether it's in the draft or undrafted free agency, as long as we keep sequencing and building this team the right way, then the depth will become tomorrow's starters, and then tomorrow's starters, then you start building behind them and hopefully just keep the train rolling here in Cleveland.
And the most important thing is, if you have the franchise quarterback, which we believe we do, that window of 2 years to maybe 7 or 8 years, and if he's the real deal and the franchise guy, that window could be 15 to 18 years. As long as people stay healthy, and there's inevitably going to be down years. Maybe one season here, one season there. It's going to happen. It happens with every team. the New England Patriots are not the normal with what they've done. Um, while the entire time Tom Brady was there. So at some point you're gonna have a down year here or there, miss the playoffs or go 6-10. It happens. And at that point you just reload and go back next year. So they're almost at that spot, Jack, and it's so nice to have that continuity at the quarterback position, because when you have that, you have such a luxury, and you've seen all these different quarterbacks change teams this year. Andy Dalton going to be the starting quarterback of the Bears. Trubisky going to back up Josh Allen. There's been countless quarterback moves this year, and when you're able to have that one constant thing, um, especially the quarterback in a quarterback-driven league, it just takes so much weight off the rest of the front office and the franchise when you don't have to worry about those kind of things. It took the Browns a long time to find theirs, but now that they do have it, um, it's nice that you don't have to stress about it, and it be the focal point of the offseason.
Yeah, not only like having the quarterback problem solved, but having the head coaching problem solved, because that was always the two things hanging over the head of the Browns organization. And within 3 years, we got the quarterback in Baker Mayfield, we got the head coach in Kevin Stefanski, and honestly, we have the right personnel man in Andrew Berry leading the charge. So I mean, with that, is everything else has seemed to fall in place. We heard that cliche on sports talk radio around here, is that if we get the quarterback, everything else will fall into place. Well, you also have to have the right leader and the right guy to set the tone. And it feels great because we have two guys that are the leaders in setting the tone. Three, even if you count Baker, with Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and Baker Mayfield, everything else has seemed to fall into place. And if everything continues to go well, we are going to have a winning football team and a winning culture here for quite some time in Cleveland.
Speaking of Baker Mayfield, he got one of his favorite targets back with the Browns re-signing Rashard Higgins to a one-year deal worth a little bit over $2 million. Jack, I know this was yours and mine, maybe one of the biggest things the Browns need to do this offseason. We know how important Rashard is to the Browns, how important Rashard is to Baker Mayfield. There's just some connections, in the NFL that make a lot of sense. Whether it's Brady and Gronk, among others, it just works, right? And with Rashard and Baker, we don't get it, but Baker seems to find him open all the time, and Rashard just catches football after football, and it seems like he's always open. And it was important that the Browns bring him back. I know, they wanted, they meaning the fans may want a longer deal than a one-year deal, but Rashard is betting on himself again, and I think that eventually it's going to pay off into one of these longer term deals, because just the connection between Baker and Rashard, it's something special, and it's nice to have.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I'm so fascinated, like how much money has Higgins turned down in the last two off seasons to come back to Cleveland, because he's only making 2.38 million. It's fully guaranteed too, and it's well deserved. But I just want to know, like, how many other teams have been knocking on his door, and how much money has he turned down just to stay in Cleveland? I mean, this is one of the feel good stories in football for Higgins, because you remember he was the fourth wide receiver taken in the 2016 draft class out of the Browns. I think it was Corey Coleman, Jordan Payton, and I think the third name was Ricardo Lewis. He was the fourth one taken, and he's the only one still left in football. And that just tells you right there. And I think he was cut a couple times, and he fought his way back. He's always been like the third or fourth guy in the Cleveland wide receiver room, whether it's when Josh Gordon and Corey Coleman were here, or when Jarvis Landry came and Brashad Perriman was in front of him. Or even Terrell Pryor was in front of him. But this dude has continued to work. You hear Andrew Hawkins once told a story of he got the wide receivers together. What ended up being Hawkins last year, which was 2016, and who was the first guy in and the last one out of the wide receiver room? Rashard Higgins. I mean, I know people kind of got rubbed the wrong way about this stuff going on between him and Kitchens back in 2019, but I feel like that was probably more on Kitchens than it was on Higgins. But when Higgins comes on, or when he's on the field, him and Baker just have this great chemistry, and they've had since Baker's got here. So I'm fascinated. Like, what's the end game going to be here? Like, Higgins, I think as long as Baker Mayfield's the quarterback of the Browns, Rashard Higgins has to be here just because they just have this instant connection and chemistry, and Higgins just continues to make plays on the field. And I know everybody like wants to get into this topic of who's going to stick around past 2021, but I think right now we should just focus on 2021, what we have, and how can the Browns take the next step and become a Super Bowl contender. And I think Higgins plays a big part in that.
Well, you kind of stole the thunder of my next question for you. I was going to ask you, out of this group of receivers and targets, and I'll throw the tight ends in there as well. Which guy do you think is going to outlast every other
one? Ooh, that is a tough question, honestly, because I mean everybody's pretty. Beckham's up in the air, Landry's up in the air, Njoku's up in the air. Depending on what Hooper does in 2021, he's up in the air. You would think right now Higgins and Bryant are the only locks potentially going into 2022. So, I mean, if Baker Mayfield is the franchise quarterback and they're going to sign him to a long-term deal, I would say Higgins is the safest right now because he is Baker's security blanket. He's Baker's go-to target. And, with everybody else being up in the air, I would think he's probably the safest, even though he's on a one-year deal when Hooper, Beckham, and Landry are all still on multi-year contracts.
Another player that the Browns re-signed was linebacker Malcolm Smith. I feel like veteran leadership is important, and I feel that's why they brought Malcolm Smith back. I know he was asked to play a lot last year when he probably doesn't have a whole lot left, but when you have a young position group with those linebackers with Taki, Mac Wilson, among others, I feel like it was important for them to bring him back. How do we feel about the Browns bringing back Malcolm Smith on another one-year deal?
It's a good move. Malcolm Smith played well last year. I mean, he did his job and his role. He was excellent in coverage last year. I think when people see that the Browns had 3 of the top 20, I think it was 25 or 26 linebackers in football, everybody would be astonished because they think, linebacker was the big problem on the Browns defense last year, when in reality it was the secondary. Malcolm Smith is a great veteran leader, obviously coming from the Seahawks, and what that defense was a few years ago with the Legion of Boom. Like he's a great leader in that locker room. He's a great mentor to Taki and Jacob Phillips, and I think he'll continue to be that this year. His role might decrease as Phillips will grow and Taki continues to grow, and whoever else they bring in potentially the free agency and the draft. But Malcolm Smith's a good guy to have in that locker room because he comes from a winning organization like Seattle. So I think bringing him back made all the sense in the world. I just wonder, like, what's going on with BJ Goodson? Is he going to come back? That's a guy I'd like to see come back. Obviously, they are looking at linebackers in free agency. They brought one in for a visit today. So I have no problem with Smith. I'm just kind of interested to see how else they're going to shape that linebacker room.
How do we feel about I know we still have one more day, and typically after we're done with the podcast, we get some more kind of news. That's just how it rolls, and I think that rolls for everybody. But we still have one more day left in the week. But how do we feel about Andrew Berry's first week of this offseason in free agency? Would you classify it as calculated aggressiveness?
Yes, without a doubt. And it baffled me when people on Twitter said Berry wasn't being aggressive enough. I go back to what he's done in the last calendar year. He revamped the offensive line. He went out and got Baker another playmaker. When Grant Delpit went down with an injury, he went out and traded for a safety who ended up being one of our top 3 or 4 defensive players on the whole team. And then this year he went out and got his number one target, the best safety on the free agent market. Yeah, I would call it calculated aggressiveness. They've been tied to a lot of free agents this year. I mean, you look back early in the week, everybody was looking at Carl Lawson and Trey Hendrickson. Andrew Berry's going to go out and target these guys, but he's not going to overpay. Like I think he's probably saying, this is what we're going to offer you. We're not going to get into a bidding war. We'd love for you to be a part of this team. If you choose to go elsewhere, that's fine. No hard feelings. But I feel like he's taking a solid approach with this. I think he's got all these options on the table, and he's made very calculated moves and good moves while still being aggressive at the same time. I feel like you go out and you go and pursue a John Johnson, who is the best safety, you make a solid offer, and the reports saying that John Johnson turned down less money to come to Cleveland, I think it says a lot about the organization. And Andrew Berry is just a guy that, he is going to make these moves, and he's building a solid football team, and he trusts the coaching staff to where I'm going to get these guys. You guys just need to coach them and put them in the right spot, and I feel like things are going to work out. So, yeah, he's made great moves. I've had no complaint about anything he's done so far, not only going back to this free agency this week, but what he's done over the last calendar year and continuing to build this Browns roster into a playoff contender.
I know everybody loves like the fancy grades, right? So if you had to grade his first week of this free agency period, what would you give it?
I would give it an A. I mean, you go out and you get the number one target and a position that was probably the top position that they needed to get this offseason, which was safety. You went out and got a young, promising edge that, had a couple down years with the team that drafted him, but he's entering a situation now where he's going to be opposite one of the best pass rushers in the league in Myles Garrett. And then you go out and you get a slot corner, which was what the Browns needed. So I think he's made solid move after solid move, and he hasn't had to overpay for anybody. And he's continuing to mold and shape this football team as he sees fit, as well as Kevin Stefanski.
So where do we go from here? Because I feel like there's probably some restructuring that's probably next on the list with where they're at cap wise. There's still plenty of free agents out there. I think you saw a lot of money spent, and now those free agent dollars are starting to dwindle. So there's certainly still a lot of talent out there. Where do you see Andrew Berry potentially striking in terms of maybe bringing in, I'll say 2 to 3 more free agents?
Well, I think they did add Takk McKinley, but I don't think they're done at the edge position. I feel like they're going to go out and sign another veteran. Jadeveon Clowney's out there. Carlos Dunlap's out there. Melvin Ingram, Alden Smith. Like, I feel like they're going to go try to get one of these guys. Clowney is obviously the big name that people want to get, but I feel like if you got any of those 4, I think they would be a solid fit. It seems to me, and Jack Duffin and I talked about this, maybe they're not in love with the edge rushers, and that's why they went ahead and made it a point to get Takk McKinley in the fold, because he's only 25 years old, and there's a good chance he could be the long-term edge 2 opposite Myles Garrett. But he just needs, some more grooming, and I feel like this coaching staff could definitely do that. We mentioned the outside corners earlier. They can look at that. But other than that, I feel like with 9 draft picks, I don't feel like they're going to make much more big-time moves. I think they're going to add some depth pieces, and then they're going to roll into the draft to where they can just take the best player available and then just go right down the list. And they might even trade back and gain some more day 2 picks, and then just take the best players available on their board and continue to build out this football team.
I know the Browns are getting Andrew Billings back, and I know they're very excited for that, but do you feel like defensive tackle maybe would be an opportunity?
I think it could be. Obviously, Larry Ogunjobi left. He signed with Cincinnati. I never thought he was going to come back anyways, just because since his rookie year, he seemed to regress. And it just didn't seem like he would be back or be in the long-term plans. I do think defensive tackle could be a position they look at in free agency. I was hoping that they'd look at Solomon Thomas. He obviously signed with the Raiders. But maybe they try to convince Ndamukong Suh to come up here if he doesn't re-sign with Tampa. It would seem like that would be where he would want to stay. But if they could get Suh on a 1-year deal, that would be amazing to add to this defensive front, because they could use a little extra nastiness up front. I wouldn't disagree with that statement. But I think that's more of a position you'll look at towards the draft. They have Jordan Elliott coming into year 2. They do have Billings coming back, and they still have Sheldon Richardson. But maybe they look towards the draft to find that long-term defensive tackle.
Yeah, definitely long-term, because, you have Sheldon Richardson, who probably won't be here too much longer. I'm sure they might restructure his deal, but I would be curious to see if they add on any years to that. I'm not really sure that they would do that. At this time,
they'll just add void years, because
right.
that's the hot topic this week is void years.
Right, void years. I'm sure Jack Duffin will enjoy us talking about void years on the podcast. So I definitely see in the draft them striking kind of like they did with Jordy and Elliott this past year, this past draft. I'm very curious to see how Andrew Billings is going to play out. I'm very excited to see it. Hopefully he can come in here and really play well next to Myles Garrett and Sheldon Richardson and whoever that other edge is going to be. It's certainly going to be a lot of fun to watch him, especially with how high we were on him last year when we signed him in free agency. So I certainly could see defensive tackle in the draft. Suh would be nice. I agree with the nastiness. Maybe another corner. I really don't see linebacker, except maybe like a special teamer kind of guy. I know you don't really pay for those in free agency, but if you could find a really good one on like a $1.5 million deal or something, I'm cool with that. Other than that, I would tend to look at it this way, Jack. Whatever they do from now on in free agency is kind of a bonus, right? They've went out, made some really good deals this first week, and whatever they do from now on, it's just like adding on as a bonus to this team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look back last year, like they made 1-year deals on like Carl Joseph, Andrew Sendejo, Kevin Johnson, and it's like we were kind of talking like, well, these could be long-term fits, but the 1-year deals, when you look back at it, are just low risk, high reward situations. So, Tank McKinley is a 1-year deal. Like he could be, like I said, the long-term edge 2 opposite Myles Garrett. But if not, like Andrew Berry can just wipe his hands, say, hey, it wasn't a good signing. We took the chance. It didn't work out. And then you move forward and then you try to find that next guy. I think that's what I like about these 1-year deals, because it gives you the option. You get the guy in the system. If he works out, maybe strike a long-term deal. But if not, then it's a low risk, high reward situation where it doesn't kill you long-term in the cap. And then you can move on and try to find someone else to fill that spot. So yeah, like anything else they do in free agency at this point, I would think would just be 1-year deals. It's just low risk, high reward situations. If it strikes gold, it strikes gold, and maybe this guy will be with the Browns for a couple years, but if not, they just move along.
And look, if you strike gold and you can't re-sign him after that year, then you're potentially in line to have a comp pick the year after that. So it's a very interesting game that you can play with that.
Depending on how much they make in free agency, of course. Unless you're one of the 5 or 6 Cleveland Browns that decided to go play for the Houston Texans, which God bless y'all for doing that. Good luck. But we're not getting comp picks for any of those, but maybe we get a late round comp pick for Kevin Johnson, who just signed with the Titans, or Kendall Lamb that signed with the Titans. I don't know how the comp pick system actually works, but because all these guys left. I mean, if like say Tag McKinley goes out and has like a 15 sack season somehow, and then he gets a big time contract next year, then the Browns could get a comp pick for him. So it's a win-win situation for both sides.
Well, and it's also like a net thing. So like if you sign somebody but you lose somebody, to it washes out, and there's no comp picks for either side. So it's just it's a complicated thing, and I know Jack Duffin could explain it better than he probably could. So
Without a doubt.
That's something that we'll have to discuss with him at a later time. But Jack, as we get on out of here, is there anything else that you want to touch upon?
Not really. I mean, I was kind of expecting more of the QB movement this week, but that hasn't happened for foreseen or unforeseen circumstances, which we really won't get into just because and if you guys know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about in light of the events that have the reports that have come out in the last 24 hours regarding one of the certain quarterbacks that could be traded. But other than that, I mean, the Browns have me fired up to see someone say that the Browns are a top 3 team in the AFC, considering where we were, Anthony, when we started this podcast 4 or 5 years ago. It is crazy the rise that they're on, and 2021 is shaping up to be a fun year to be a Browns fan.
I know Miss Mollis is going to kill me for this, but isn't it nice to not have to worry about whether Deshaun Kaiser is going to be the starting quarterback? and we've come a long way from that.
Oh, God. Well, no, let's think about it. When we started this, we were debating whether or not the Browns should take Myles Garrett or Mitchell Trubisky, which God bless you, Mitch. Good luck in Buffalo. But yeah, I mean, we were talking about that first year, is Deshaun Kaiser the long-term answer at quarterback? And now we have Baker Mayfield, and we are in contention for a Super Bowl. So, yeah, it's a lot better talking about this than what we were talking about at the beginning.
I'm so sorry, Miss Mollis, but Deshaun deserved a lot better than the situation that he was put in here. I'll at least say that he deserves. He deserves so much better. That poor guy. I felt so bad for Deshaun. But Jack, want to let everybody know what's going on. I know you're keeping up with most of it here.
Yeah, I mean, just stay locked to thedogland.com, at the Dogland on Facebook, at the Dogland on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Jack McCurry08. We have something coming up in the works. Obviously, we talked about it on the last episode. We're expanding our podcast network. The Top Dogs podcast is starting in April with myself and Alex Hale. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, go Browns.